Welcome, everybody. It tastes different in gaming news. What's on the news today? Oh, Sony's getting sued again. Sony is facing a $7.9 billion mass lawsuit over PlayStation Store prices. According to Reuters, Sony must face a lawsuit worth up to £6.3 billion, $7.9 billion, over claims that the PlayStation maker abused its dominant position, leading to unfair prices for customers. A London tribunal ruled on Tuesday Sony Interactive was sued, confirmed on Tuesday. Sony Interactive was sued last year on behalf of nearly 9 million people in the United Kingdom who had bought digital games or add-on content through the PlayStation Store. Alex Neal is a consumer advocate who has worked on previous campaigns, is bringing the case against Sony, which is valued at £5 billion or $6.23 billion plus interest. Can't forget that. Her lawyers said that the aggregate damages estimate of the case was up to £6.3 billion in court filings last month. She says the company abused its dominant position by requiring digital games and add-ons to be bought and sold only via the PlayStation Store, which charges 30% commission to developers and publishers. Essentially, what this all comes down to is they're doing a massive double dip, and they are doing a full control on pricing. Now, as we all know, you cannot buy digital content anywhere for Sony other than through the Sony website. I don't even think you can get discounted Sony cards anymore or anything like that through Amazon or some other websites. So this lawsuit is basically saying that Sony is overcharging prices for content, games, DLCs, things like that. Because if they control the only means to obtain, then they're going to basically set prices even for non Sony, Sony games, third party games. So it's we've had this conversation a few times throughout about how Sony is really bad when it comes to its player base. It's just not nice. They got great games. That's it. That's the only thing I love about Sony. As their business model and practices go, even their diehard fans know, well, yeah, they could be a little crappy, but it's Sony, so gimme. I'm going to jump to Nick here, but it's really skeevy, in my opinion, to the way Sony operates this. So let's jump to Nick, because it pisses me off when I hear this and talk about this. So Nick, Sony overcharging players, yes or no? Go.
Well, I mean, I don't know about overcharging. I mean, but because the prices are the same across for a game. If you go buy X game on PlayStation, it's the same price as it is on Xbox, right?
But one sale doesn't transfer to the other console.
What do you mean? Oh, you mean like if something goes on sale?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Developers don't get the choice to put the thing on sale for both consoles. Sony makes that decision to allow that choice.
For it to go on sale?
Yeah.
Like so sale price?
Yeah. So let's say you want to buy a X game and it's a third party game. Just because it's on Microsoft doesn't mean you can get the sale on there, because Sony controls the sales. Right. If they allow those sales, and those are based on purchases already. So, yeah. Do you think it's right that they get to control what if the developer wants to put something on sale?
I mean, does in their own ecosystem?
I don't know if Microsoft does.
That's what I was going to say. I don't know if Microsoft allows them, right? I mean, because Microsoft controls, I would assume, when things go on sale on their storefront. I don't think it's up to the developer or the publisher to say, hey, my item's on sale, right?
Mm.
And on either one, I think one of the biggest things for Sony is, and we've talked about this before, is just you can buy, so just one caveat, you can buy digital cards for Sony store from like third-party retailers like Target or whatever. So I looked that up, and they do sell those. They also do
But
sell
can you get
PlayStation
those
Plus
at-
cards.
Can you get discounted prices on them now?
Well, I saw Target was selling
Like a
well,
$20 card for 18 or some crap.
I mean, I don't know. How often do they do that?
It's, you used to be able to get them remotely, quite often.
Like on
and
sale,
then the more,
though?
yeah. Hey, you buy this card, this $25 card for $20. You used to be able to see that more, but the more digital content has taken over, you don't see those sales as much. So
Yeah. And that'd be up to the retailer at that point, right? I mean, if they wanted to sell $100 card for $90, right? Because they've already bought that from Sony, right? The retailer has, so it's really up to the retailer.
I don't know how that works. I don't know if it's, hey, I acquire this many cards, I sell this many, then they get paid on that many.
I don't know. I would imagine it's the retailer buying those things and then reselling them, right? Or does Sony just send them out to them? They're like, here, sell these.
Well, I think it would depend on the amount of sales. So they say, hey, Sony, we estimate we're going to get, 5,000 $20 cards sold. Just making crap as they go here. And then, Sony ships them those cards and they don't get paid unless they sell those cards.
Yeah, maybe.
So, I mean, I really don't know because they're not controlling, the store isn't going to control how well Sony products sell. That's up to Sony.
But putting them on discount, I would think, would be up to the store.
Yeah, probably. I guess it just depends on how
franchise, right? Or the franchisee. Yeah. In that case, the business, Best Buy or something, going to do like some sort of sale where they're selling them for cheap. Got to get rid of stock. I think the biggest thing though is Sony not allowing, everything that comes from Sony surrounds their ecosystem, right? Now, we talked about digital cards, but you can't buy like digital, right? And I think we've looked this up before. You can't buy like digital copies of games outside of Sony's store.
Yeah, you can't go to like Best Buy and buy a digital code for a game.
Right. Yeah. So in order for you to get so I'm looking up like a PlayStation 5 game and, it's not going to give me the option to buy that game digitally, just a digital code for me to pop into my PlayStation and purchase it. Whereas if I look up like an Xbox game or a Switch game, then I have the ability to buy a code. And that allows them to be, so I just looked up like Jedi Survivor on GameStop as an example. For PlayStation, if I look at buying it on a PlayStation 5, my only options are buying it new or pre-owned. If I look at it for Xbox, I can buy it digital, new, or pre-owned, right? And so that's the biggest thing that sucks about, that's predatory for Sony, is that I can't, GameStop or Best Buy can't say like, hey, we got such and such game for PlayStation 5, a digital code for $10, right? And so they can't be competitive, or Sony doesn't have to be competitive with other stores, right? Because if a store or a group, a big store like Best Buy or something is selling a brand new game on the PlayStation digitally for, $10, $20 less, then what's going to stop somebody to say, hey, screws PlayStation Store, I'm going over here and buying it from there. And then Sony has to be competitive in that space and say, okay, well, we're going to sell ours for $20 less, right, than it is, to compete with the store so we get more of the sales. So that's you know, I think that's where most of these lawsuits and stuff are coming from, is saying like anything you want to buy digitally from Sony has to come from Sony, right? It has to come from Sony's store. You can't go anywhere and buy a digital code for that product. And even some of their peripheral products, right? They do that through their PlayStation Direct too, to get some of their stuff, not later on, but it seems like the initial launch, like they always launch stuff just directly from the PlayStation Store, and that's it, right? We've had that with a few of their products, and then maybe later on they come to retail, but and that causes a lot of problems for availability, people to be able to buy these things, scammers to, resellers to come in and purchase up all the product, because in the website to go down or have a ton of traffic and queues and various other things like that. And Sony can set the price and say, this is how much it costs, and no one else can compete because no one else gets that, right? You have to buy directly from them, or it's nothing. It's nerf or nothing at that point, right? So that's what makes it predatory, and that's one thing that as a consumer, it's very anti-consumer. It's good as a consumer to have choices. If I want to go somewhere else to buy a product because maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's better for me in some sort of case, or maybe it's cheaper, or whatever the fact case may be, I should be able to go to GameStop or Best Buy or wherever and buy a digital code for a game on the PlayStation Store. I shouldn't have to go through there to buy any digital product, right? Or any product from Sony. That allows them to monopolize the market in a sense, right? Where all of their products are just contained in their own ecosystem. They don't have to like have their products out there in other places to where there's competition. And that's one thing we talked about too. You have the Sony ponies and the Xbots out there that want the PlayStation to die or the Xbox to die, and that's not a good thing either. You have one of them die off, and then once one becomes superior, then you're looking at like they can set any prices they want, right? They have no competition. They have nothing to compete against at that point. So therefore, screw the consumer. If you want this PlayStation X or PlayStation 6 or whatever the hell, you're going to pay whatever price we tell you to pay. Otherwise, you have no choice. There's no more choices, right? But since you have Xbox, which Xbox, even though Xbox isn't, is always in last place, it's still Sony's competition. And so Sony, even look at the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, and Xbox would do the same thing if the roles were reversed. But look at that, neither one of them wanted to say the price of their box. It took forever until Sony said, screw it, fine. Ours is 500, and Xbox said, so is ours, And so it was like they were waiting for each other to put out the price because of that competition. And without it, Sony would just be like, all right, our box is $800. You don't really have, as a consumer, you don't really have a choice. You want it or not. It's 800. So these types of things, these lawsuits are good. And hopefully we would get one. These last two, the last one and this one has all been the UK. Hopefully the US will see something similar at some point, because it is predatory here as well. Everywhere that Sony does this, and they need to be more competitive with the market out there to be able to give consumers more options on where they can buy their goods.
Yeah, I fully understand if it's a first party thing. Sony owns the game. It's your stuff, man. Go right ahead. But that should not be allowed on third party properties. Period. Sony has the only thing keeping Sony from truly going, full evil is Microsoft, really, because and I know Microsoft is in last place, and greatly and rightfully so, for the most part, is the fact that when the 360 and PS3 were announced, Sony's head was so full of crap that they dropped a $600 bomb. Plain and simple. Microsoft said $299. I think it was $299 launch, maybe $399. Pretty sure it was $299. But I can't remember. It was $360. It was years ago. But $360 out of the gate kicked the crap out of Sony. And it was primarily due to the price. Because I didn't, and I'm a big Sony fan, especially at the time. I didn't buy the PlayStation 3 because of the price. It's too goddamn much. It's still too much. Obviously, I paid $500 for mine, but it's still too damn much. But I did it. But that's what's keeping Sony from dropping $600, $700, $800 consoles, is because the last time they tried that, a competitor came in at a much, much lower price, and it put a hurt on Sony, and it really benefited Microsoft, and it really excelled them. Now, Sony turned around and they reversed a lot of the things, like their pricing and the model itself of the PlayStation. They thinned it down and everything to make it more marketable, to reduce the price to make it more marketable. And and then at the end, I believe PlayStation caught up and then exceeded 360. Nobody's going to argue that PlayStation doesn't make great consoles or good consoles, great games. But they're a terrible company. They're a terrible consumer company. They screw their people more than any other company I can think of besides maybe Lexus. So we need to have competition to keep Sony and other companies and any other type of market from doing those things. Because without competition, you got one person deciding everything. And that's why your oil prices are so high, because you got one group that decides everything. Period. You don't get choices for that stuff. Same thing with your medicines and all that. So without competition, you're basically boning everybody else. So if you want Microsoft to go out of business, guess what? If Sega don't come back, you're going to be paying $700, $800 for that next console for PlayStation. I guarantee freaking to it. Plain and simple. And the PC Master Race, you ain't got no skin in that game, so you're fine. Sony ain't gonna touch Steam or anything. But it is pretty. It's pretty dirty the way Sony does it. It really saddens me that they've gotten away with it this long too. So, but hopefully the lawsuit will trigger some more. I don't want to see Sony go out of business or anything, because then we'd have Microsoft and Nintendo. Well, Nintendo we don't worry about, because Nintendo just does whatever the hell they want. But Microsoft be like, all right, we're the only console competitor, so $800 for Gears 7 or 5 or 12 or whatever they're at. So I don't know. It worries me that Sony's gotten away with it this long, but nothing happened from the previous lawsuit. I don't honestly expect anything to happen from this one, but if it does, hopefully it triggers an effect, because we learned a lot of dirty things about Sony and Microsoft, but primarily Sony from the Microsoft acquisition thing through the FCC, the lawsuit and all that. A lot of things came out about Sony, and there's people looking at them. So hopefully Sony will play nice and be like, you know what, guys, we're going to take a step back. We're going to start, letting y'all sell some digital crap, at least for third parties, I think. But anywho, Nick, you got anything else on Sony's baloney?
No. I mean, it would be nice for Sony to do that. But again, that would just be nice, because it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
They're on top, they're number one right now. So they don't really have they don't have a need to change anything, really.
Yep. So. And if PlayStation fanboys want to make sure Sony doesn't keep bending them over, they need to vote with their wallets and show Sony that, hey, you know what? We're not going to fall for this crap anymore. Now come back to reality, and we'll continue to support and love you. I will. So, but that's what we got on it. So what do you all think? Do you think Sony should be allowed to keep marketing to themselves and controlling the prices, and not allow GameStop or somebody else to sell digital codes for games and things like that? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to also hit the notifications. Hit those subscription button down there. It's really simple. It's right there. I know you're full from Thanksgiving. It's about a week later. You've had time to digest. Let it go. Hit that subscribe. And until next time, see ya.